Hi, welcome in. If it's your first time in, I'm Siva. Thank you for joining us. If you're coming back, welcome in. And I'm so excited that you're here. I'm so excited for this episode because it was something that just happened in my life and it inspired so much greatness that I just cannot wait to share. This was a special moment for me because I don't know if you ever have these breakthroughs in your life and you're like, I just want to share this. I just want to share this so that everyone can experience the lightness that I just experienced. Because breakthrough, so this was a breakthrough moment. And I'm super excited. So today's episode is all about hurt, apologies, and forgiveness. I'm going to explore all three of these topics, but my real intention for this episode is that you experience for yourself a deep forgiveness, whether it be for yourself, whether it be something someone else did. My goal is that you feel more connected to others without dependency on anything they do or say for your happiness. You have so much lightness and forgiveness within your being that it pretty much doesn't faze you what happened a day ago, a year ago. And if you see your ex at the grocery store, you know who you are. You feel light inside. You've already forgiven this person. You're not thinking about it anymore. You have true emotional freedom. That's my intention for where this episode takes you on your journey. And I guarantee you, if that's your intention too, you'll get there. So let's get into how to get you there. And I'll start off with a story. So this episode, this exercise that was channeled through me, was all prompted by me running into someone, spending time with someone who had really hurt me in the past. Maybe you have this fantasy too, but my ego, one of its greatest fantasies is getting apologies from the people who I believe wronged me. And I don't think I've ever experienced that actually happening. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but this person that I did feel hurt from in the past actually apologized to me. Ego's greatest fantasy, right? Should have been the best day of my life. But it really wasn't. To get more into the story, this happened a long time ago. And part of it was I had already forgiven them on my own. It happened like years and years ago. And it wasn't per se anything they did wrong. It was just something that landed in my world and hurt my wounds, triggered me. So it wasn't that they had, really deeply wronged me in a way. I was not expecting an apology at all. By this time, I'm kind of already neutral on the situation. Time has passed, and it really caught me off guard. It surprised me. But what surprised me the most was my emotional reaction, or the lack of emotional reaction. And I just thought that was so interesting. That's like one of my ego's probably the greatest thing that could happen. Someone somewhat being like, oh, I was wrong and you were right. But that wasn't the experience at all. And I was just more shocked that I wasn't affected. And I kind of sat with that for a while. I went home and I thought, this is odd. What's happening? And my first thought was really just laughing at the situation, finding it humorous. And the second thought was interesting evolutionary experience, more neutral. So I say, okay, if this is an interesting evolutionary experience and it's complete, how did I evolve? What happened? How did I grow? How did I learn? And what can I do to just really close this chapter and take away all that I can take away? And I reflected on the actual experience. It's like, okay, the lesson of don't take things personal, the lesson of neutralizing events, the lesson of time healing everything. And I've basically integrated those. So it's like, okay, well, what else? If this was an interesting evolutionary experience, what was my evolutionary experience with this apology? And it was almost funny and uncomfortable to think about again. But the more I sat with it, it was like, well, it didn't really feel like that was for me. It didn't really feel like it was to help me, but I don't feel like it hurt me. It was hilarious to have something the darker parts of me kind of fantasize about happen, and then it not being satisfying at all. Hilarious, actually. But B, it felt like it was more for the other person, for their comfort in the moment of knowing, hey, we kind of cleared the air. I'm okay with you. You're okay with me. And like, there's nothing wrong with that. If that's what that other person needed to do to feel comfortable, to sleep at night, so be it. That's not my experience. And it kind of made me reflect about apologies. And in my life, how do I apologize? Where do they come from? And do they have that feeling of, hey, that was more for Siva and that wasn't really for me? And that to me was the aha moment. This is the chance for me to learn about apologies and forgiveness. So I wasn't feeling touched, I'll say, by that apology, but what would have made it feel like it was for me? What would have made it feel like a really heart-centered and personal moment? That is what really makes the big difference for me. So with these moments where you do feel like you either want an apology or forgiveness, because it's the same, different side of the same coin, right? It was another thing that came out of this. What goes into an apology and what goes into forgiveness? So I started to ask myself, if I am in a relationship with someone, I want us both to grow from the moment. I want it to be a heart-centered moment that uplifts us both. What goes into an apology? I channeled this formula for heart-centered apologies that not only serve to teach us how to apologize and surrender and be open when we've made a mistake, but also to be on the receiving end of that. How can I surrender and relax and forgive and be lighter when something did touch my heart, when something did hurt me? And how can I be in balance with both of these sides and know that, hey, I have that shadowy side of me that has hurt others as well, but also I deserve to forgive the people that hurt me. How can we nurture and support both of those sides? And it all comes back to the same core principles. So get your pen, get your paper out, because this is all about heart-centered apologies and forgiveness. So I'm going to run through this formula that I received about how to apologize in the most heart-centered way possible. Now, after I explain this, we're going to see how this can impact you with forgiveness. And it's the same exact formula for an apology for you to take and use that as an exercise in forgiveness and access deeper parts of yourself that you probably didn't even know how upset you felt about a situation, how you really felt about it. We're going to use this same exercise to look at some of your past and clear it out, help you process it. So while I'm going through the apology part, please don't just dismiss it like, oh, I don't have anyone to apologize to currently, because it's, like I said, it's two sides of the same coin, and you might not have anyone to apologize today to, so you think, but it will be very impactful if you have the goal to have a heart-centered relationship where you're really seeing, hearing, and feeling that other person. Can you imagine having a relationship that is so close and that other person feels deeply that you are there for them? That is what this formula is going to facilitate in all areas of your life. So first, let's jump into the apology formula. It's a conversation. Instead of your apology being scripted, rehearsed, and fast, I got to get it out so I can clear the air and we can move on and I can feel good again. It's a conversation. Imagine the difference of me saying, hey, I'm really sorry I did this thing and I want to you to know that I'm sorry. Can we move on? And maybe I will, maybe I won't do it again. Versus, hey, I'd like to sit down and explore this situation with you. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to talk about it with you, see where you're at. Can you kind of feel in your body which one would land better? The second one of a conversation, it's more about you. it's more about your experience versus a scripted apology that is quick and well thought out. Yeah, that's great that you put thought into it, but it lacks the part of the apology that acknowledges the other person, that where it's more about them and not about you feeling guilty. It's about that other person and their experience. And that's the difference between a quick apology and holding space for someone's experience. And that's the difference between a relationship that feels like it's supporting you like nothing else and something that just feels or brings you down. Second part, in an apology, if it's a conversation, there needs to be a question. How did that make you feel? You can't just assume, oh, it made them feel terrible. Ask, when I did X, how did that make you feel? That is the biggest difference from a regular apology versus a heart-centered apology. Because now you have just opened the floor for them to take it and run with it. You are now a professional space holder, and you can really help this person process everything they need to about the situation because you've given them the floor. In the old paradigm of apologies, it's all about saying, hey, I need you to know this, that, and the third. But this way, it's all about hearing the other person's experience and allowing them to fully be seen, heard, and felt. And now that you know all the details, all the reasons why that situation had friction, now you can truly apologize and you can put that apology out there. We're going to take it a few steps further than just apologizing. Now what I want you to do is flip it. They told you how that made them feel. Instead of just apologizing, after you're done apologizing, share the truth. Share your truth. Whatever your perspective of the situation was, feel free to share that as well. But also share with them that maybe that made you feel small, but you are not small. You're really important to me. You're a light in my life. I love you. That made you feel unworthy, but I want you to know that you are worthy. You are good. You are loving. You are perfect just how you are. Sharing the truth and uplifting that other person so that now we've just taken it from an apology and wrong, but now we've taken it to where we want that other person to be at. We want that other person to know that they are worthy. We want them to feel good just as they are. If you're having an apology in a relationship that you really care about, you want that person to know how much you really love and appreciate them and the truth about who they are. It might seem like weird to look someone in the eyes and say, hey, you're worthy. You're perfect just how you are. But you know from your own life, how many times do we have conversations like that? Like almost never. It feels so nice hearing those things from the outside and hearing it repeated and repeated and repeated back to you. And saying it to others feels good too. The more you affirm that in others, the more you affirm it in yourself, and you live from that space of extending the words that help other people to accept themselves and loving them even through a crisis. Now that you've finished uplifting them, uplifting the moment, now is the real changer. An apology without a change or without a plan is chaos. Ask, how can I make this right? What do we want to do instead? If you're apologizing for something and then have no plan to change the behavior, have no plan to do something different, it's just manipulation. And that's not what you want. That's not what that other person wants. So what are we going to do instead? Even if this comes from like a small argument, how are we going to make sure that I am hitting these marks so that we don't have this conversation again? So that I really mean everything that I just said. So that we can jive instead of clash on this specific issue. So asking that part and implementing is the final step of an apology. But since you probably don't have anyone you're thinking about apologizing to, let's talk about how this can apply to the people in your life that have hurt you. So I came up with this apology formula because I was really thinking, okay, how would that moment really have touched me the most? And I thought, okay, well, let me try it out. And if you don't know, your imagination is one of the most powerful tools that you have. And the saddest thing is today we are not touching our imagination like we used to. I'm sure you experienced that as a kid, like just making up games, playing whatever. But even kids nowadays, our imagination has been put in front of us. We don't need to use our imagination. We have Netflix. We don't need to use our brain. We have TikTok. So working your imagination, the more you work it, the more you will know how real it is and how impactful it can be. But if you haven't had that experience, I'm going to show you right now how it can be so real. Okay, imagine sucking on a lemon. Imagine cutting a lemon and sucking a lemon and how that tastes, the yellow peel and the smell of the lemon. What's happening to you right now on a physical level? Your mouth is watering. And, I'm sure any human person can tell you, imagination stimulates your physical body. Imagination can cause physical reactions. We know this. And on a kind of esoteric, metaphysical level, the same thing is true. If you imagine driving a car, your body, your subconscious starts reacting to it eventually like you are driving a car. Maybe after 3 seconds or 3 times or a minute of you driving a car in your imagination, your body really starts to take that on and feel that. That's why visualization works. The point of all of this is to say, you can use your imagination to heal things. You can use your imagination to help you process. So what we just did with that perfect, if I don't say so myself, with that amazing heart-centered apology, you're going to take that person that hurt you and you're going to have them apologize to you in that way. Now, hold the phone. This isn't so that you can feel like a sense of rightness, a sense of righteousness, that they are wrong and you are right about the situation. What you're doing is you're using that person as an aspect of yourself to open up those parts of you, that stuck energy that wants to be explored. So coming from a certain person, you're more likely to physically have a reaction in your body. When you see a picture of your ex with someone else, you might feel that physically in your body. So we're using our imagination to open up those pockets of energy, right? Okay, back to the story. So I received this apology formula and I wanted to test it out. So the last person that I felt kind of hurt by, and honestly, it's been kind of stuck on my mind. You know how, I'll be real, I'll be so vulnerable. There has been incidents in my life where something unfolds and I'm literally thinking about that person for years. And that's a great way to know that something needs to be processed. If you're thinking about this person day and night, if you are stuck on this incident, this person, this scenario, you're trying to fall asleep and you're thinking about it when you're going to the bathroom, when you're cooking food, there's some stuck energy for you to process. So with this last situation, I experienced that, it kind of touched on some sensitive spots. I kind of been thinking about this person, this scenario. And obviously that means I have some processing to do. So I'm thinking, okay, let me do this exercise and I'll imagine this conversation with that person. Whew. So I did that exact formula that we talked about. The conversation, them asking the question, how did this impact you? How did that make you feel? Them apologizing, them telling me the truth, their truth, the truth of me, the truth of life, uplifting me, and then asking the question, how can I make this right? 5 steps. Let me tell you, with just the question of how did this make you feel, I opened up things that I didn't know were there. I got to process on the level that I hadn't been able to before. So I was really super excited about sharing this exercise, because afterwards, not only did I just feel so light, but the next day I realized, hey, I'm not thinking about this situation that much. That person's not on my mind. I felt like I processed so much with this exercise. And so I want to tell you each step what I did. So I mentioned the 5 steps, but I did kind of have a little twist at the end. So backtracking a little, when someone does something that hurts you, 9 times out of 10, it's not really what they did. And 9.9 times out of 10, it's not really what they did. It's all about you and your experience of it. It would only upset you if you already had pockets within yourself that felt that way. And maybe that's what attracted the situation, so that you could purify it, so that you could release it. So with that being said, that other person doesn't really hold the key to your happiness. It's all within you. Surprise, surprise. We create our own illusion of pain, so therefore we have the key to solving it. This is a relaxing belief, and it puts the power back into your hands. But that also means that the only person that can really make amends, the only person that can really uplift you, is yourself. You are your own best friend, your own soulmate. And this isn't some hyper-independent thing. This is about knowing who you are so deeply, so truthfully, feeling yourself as whole, so that you can share that with another person, so that you can be yourself, your full self, with another person. Because if you aren't able to uplift yourself, there's no way that another person can do it. If you aren't able to hold space for yourself, there's no way you're going to be able to do it for someone else. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because half of the exercise is about you experiencing this, using this person to bring up that issue that triggered you. But the other half is about a conversation with yourself, about making amends, because it's not really up to that person whether you're happy or not, whether you feel complete and whole about the situation. It's really up to you. So this is exactly what I did. I imagined me and that person sat having this conversation. They invite me for a conversation, and they ask, how did that make you feel? Ooh, brought up a bunch of things, brought up a lot of things for me to process, things I didn't know were there, and the tears already started there. Then an apology from that person. That I imagined that person apologizing to me, and them sharing their truth, what they might say from their perspective, because they weren't trying to hurt me. They're living their life, just triggered me, It's nothing's personal, right? So I imagined that their side of the story, and them telling the truth. You are this, you are that. This is the truth. And I mean, sharing the truth of life. Like, we are all inherently worthy, and you are perfectly you. You're perfect just how you are. I never meant to make you feel this, that, and the third, because you aren't any of that. It's the truth. So I imagined that from them, and that felt good. But really, who I want to hear that from is me, because that other person isn't the one that believes it. It's me. So the end of the exercise, I said, okay, the question about sharing the truth, uplifting, and how do I make amends, that's a me thing. That comes from within me. So I asked myself, okay, what's the truth then? What's the truth about the situation? And that's when the real truth comes out. That's when the truth about what you really are, what the situation really is about, comes up. And it's really about what you prefer. I'm not saying just make up things to say in there that you don't believe, like, oh, you're the prettiest girl in the world, you're this, you're that, but stuff that you really believe, stuff that you really believe is the truth, and what you really prefer for your beliefs. If you had a situation that came up and it hurt you because you felt unworthy, maybe your truth about the situation would be, hey, you are so uniquely you. There's no one else in this world that's you. And you are made in the image of God. You are made in the image of your Creator. You are beautiful just how you are. And that's something that I believe. That's something that I could say to myself. But for me to say to myself, oh, I'm the prettiest person in the room, I'm always right, I'm always, perfect, I don't believe that. And sometimes these positive thinking things, it's like you almost create a split in your consciousness when you tell yourself something that you don't believe. So when I say tell yourself the truth in this, I'm not saying say something that sounds good from the outside. I mean tell the truth, the real truth from deep inside of you. And it goes beyond what sounds good. It goes beyond what makes sense. It goes to what feels good. So after telling myself the truth about the situation, I said, okay, well, how can I make this right? How can I make amends? And that's when you can really change your behavior. Instead of having your patterning be a certain way, instead of putting attachment to people on the outside, instead of lying to yourself or to someone else, you can say, okay, from now on, I want myself to do things a certain way. I want myself to be like this. I want myself to be like that. And this is obviously personal to what your situation is about. But like I said, the true healing and the true forgiveness, you only have the key to. And thinking that someone else has access to that it's a fantasy and it's ridiculous. So if you have something, a situation that is bogging you down, you've been thinking about it for years, you've been thinking about it for months, for days, I encourage you, take this flow and this exercise and do it, thinking of that person and then thinking with yourself. Because honestly, it can be super easy to forgive someone else because you have that knowing, okay, they're a human as well. But sometimes the hardest person to forgive is yourself, because we're so hard on ourselves, like, I should have known better. I shouldn't have done it this way, And all of that is an illusion as well, because the truth is we're all doing our best. And even if you knew something up here, you might not have known it in here. And if you're just listening on a podcast, I'm pointing to my head. You might have known something in your head, but if you don't know it in your heart, it's not going to reflect in your actions. So forgive yourself for not knowing things in your heart and making mistakes and then telling yourself, I should have known better. Because sometimes lessons aren't integrated and we don't embody it enough to make the decision that later on the line, when it is embodied, when it is integrated, we know we could have made. So it's like judging yourself at 6 for stuff that you didn't know at 5, right? It just doesn't make sense. So moving on to that, now is a really fun part. Can you now get some flexibility in your being with this concept of forgiveness and apologizing? I said it's the same coin, different sides. Can we flip this? Let's flip it. And now, have you ever asked yourself, or could you ask yourself now, do you think there's anybody that you might owe an apology to? Anybody that might have hurt or felt less than from your actions? And I'm not saying that you did anything wrong. Like every scenario in this podcast I'm talking about in my life, no one did anything wrong. Everyone was literally doing their best, living their lives. But sometimes when you're living your life, choosing your choices, that can hurt someone. And it's okay to apologize or hold space for someone without making yourself wrong and acknowledging their hurt. Kind of like in a breakup. That's like most things. It's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I know that in itself might hurt you. It triggers some of your core wounds. And that's a good example too, because it depends on how much that person doesn't know themselves. If you think that your life depends on another person, when they break up with you, they're going to lose their SHIT. But if someone has done that processing before, they feel more secure in who they are, they know, okay, it's just not in alignment anymore. I don't want to be with someone who doesn't want to be with me anyways. It hurts And you can hold space for that, and let's both heal and move on and process. So when we're talking about apologizing and forgiving, there's really no one that's in the wrong most of the time. Like, I'm not talking about situations where things are against the law and there's abuse happening, but when I'm talking about apologizing and holding space, most of the time people are just doing their best, and they may have made decisions or things that are like, oh, that maybe that wasn't out of integrity. That definitely wasn't out of integrity, but it doesn't mean that that person still wasn't doing their best, because if their best was integrity, they would have done that. So back to what I asked, for energy balancing purposes, is there anyone that you might owe an apology to? And you can run through that exercise and mentally do that exercise and imagine what that other person might say. I did this as well after that because I wanted to see what that might be like from another person's perspective. And it really helped me empathize and feel more connected to another person. Because really, we talk about being in someone else's shoes, but how many times do we really sit there and think, wow, what that really might be like in someone's shoes? And when you take the time to do that, you notice, wow, that situation really feels different from that other person's perspective. And I want you to be mindful of who you apologize to, because kind of like at the beginning of this story, in theory, an apology is great, but if it's self-serving, it doesn't land well with the other person, in my experience. Maybe there's more I'll learn later, but in my life as well, part of the reason I felt so interested to deep dive into this is that apology that I had gotten, it felt kind of self-serving. But I've definitely given apologies that were self-serving. I apologized simply because I felt guilty about the situation, because I knew I wasn't being my best self. But honestly, how did that apology serve the other person? If anything, it might have just stirred things up for them. So before you go in person and apologize, unless you've actually transgressed, unless you've actually broken an agreement, transgressed, I would ask, how does this apology serve the other person? Because an apology out of selfishness and out of your own, guilt, it might not help the other person that much. So if you do feel that, and you don't feel like it would really serve the other person, or it's not plausible to do it, maybe they've passed on, maybe it just wouldn't make sense to do the actual apology with them, it will have a similar effect doing it mentally. And it's very great for just flexibility to just put yourself in another person's shoes and see how that situation may have affected them. And if you can't think of a single thing, maybe just think about a time that maybe you were hurt from someone, or a time you told someone no or rejected them, and kind of see how just the situation felt from their shoes, just for energy purposes, just to see what it's like on the other side of that. And so if I'm being unclear, take that heart-centered apology exercise and practice apologizing to someone in your mind's eye. Take that person, ask them for a conversation, and say, hey, how did it affect you when I did this, that, and the third? How did it make you feel? And imagine what they might say to that, and apologize, and run through that whole exercise with you as the apologizer. Because when you're really good at both of those things, it's like giving and receiving. When you're really good at both of those things, it flows easier, and you're more balanced, and it makes you more complete in your energy field, being able to not just apologize really well, but forgive really well, because it's two sides of the same coin. And the more you forgive others, and the more you forgive yourself, and the more others forgive you, and the more you're sending good vibes to other people and holding yourself accountable for your actions, the lighter you will feel, the higher your consciousness will rise, and just the better you'll feel on a day-to-day basis. And there's not going to be this big block in between you two. It's no longer a problem of separation. The more separate you feel from your fellow human, the more separate you feel, the more alone you feel, the harder that life is. And the more that we do this work to let go of the pain, let go of the hurt, the more we realize, hey, we're all one. And maybe it sounds cheesy, but it starts to become evident that everyone is an aspect of yourself, and we are all one. We're all one thing. We're all part of the same system. We're all part of the same material. We're all made up of the same thing, and everything is here within ourselves. And so it really helps you on a day-to-day basis with just feeling calm and at ease to walk around knowing that you're supported, knowing that you are loved. You're here with people who are you, instead of walking around, that person might hurt me, they look dangerous, he is separate. No, we're one. Just like your organ, your heart is maybe seems separate from your liver, but together they make a body. The same thing is true with people. The same thing is true for everything. We all come together and make this thing that is whole. So now that you understand how to apologize from this heart-centered place, you know how to forgive from this heart-centered place, and you have the capability to hold space not only for others, but really for yourself, and forgive and accept and let go at this level. The last thing I want to mention is acceptance as forgiveness. Even if that person doesn't apologize, a path of forgiveness is acceptance. Can you see that everyone is doing the best that they can? And can you accept that person as the human being that they are, who is fallible and prone to making mistakes and messing up and trying again? Can you see that person in themselves, it's an expression of infinity, and can you accept them for all that they are, including their great qualities and also some of the darker, shadowy parts that you experience in your life as well? When you can start to see the people that hurt you in that light, it's like day and night. It goes from someone's a villain to they're doing their best. They're a kindergartner. not in a degrading way, but aren't we all like innocent children just like learning what to do? And even if you're at a point where it's like, oh, they should have known better, they're grown. They didn't know better. We didn't know better. So back to knowing something in your head versus knowing it in your heart. That person, for whatever reason, they don't know what's good for them. They don't know what will really help them in life. They don't really know what works, and they're experimenting with that. So just like we have made mistakes as well, other people do too. And the more that you get comfortable with seeing yourself and seeing your kind of shadowy parts, the more you realize, oh, we all kind of have that. And it becomes less of a deal of forgiving the people who have made mistakes on your path, because, well, haven't we all made mistakes? And when you can accept yourself with all your shadowy parts, you can accept others for their shadowy parts too. And when you accept, you forgive, and it's not a thing anymore. I don't know if I really have all the right words to say what I'm explaining, but maybe you can feel it in my transmission. It's a moment that comes from the heart where you say, you're imperfect and the way you acted landed in my life has hurt, but I see that you're imperfect. And with all your highs, with all your lows, you're a human being and I love you. When I say I love you, it doesn't mean you have to see that person. It doesn't mean they have to know you said I love you. It doesn't mean anything. It's a personal choice that you make to align with love in your life, because the more you align with love, the better you feel, the greater your life is, the more your life flows, the more you get the great things, the more you get the results that you really like to see, the more you feel good. At a certain point, it becomes like, how do I say this? It's like, how could I resist the love? It feels so good. My mind says I have to hold on to this, but in my body, it feels so good to just relax and feel love. And if you don't feel the love, you don't have to force it. But if you do feel the love, why resist that? Nothing is worth holding on to so much and blocking the love, because that is ultimately source. That is ultimately love. That is light. That is truth. And the more that we have love within our lives, the less we'll even be asking ourselves how to forgive someone, because love says it's obvious how to forgive. I mean, you love. Love doesn't keep score. Love isn't even the one saying I'm separate or how do I forgive someone. Love accepts from the beginning and love accepts from the end. And even if you're not there yet, even if we're not there yet at every moment, we get glimpses of it. And you have to, even if you're not aware, but I think you know what I'm talking about. So this was kind of a longer podcast, but I really encourage you to write down the steps of a conversation, holding space, apologizing, sharing your truth, uplifting, and making amends. Because when you get that down and you run yourself through that flow, it will help you process and make you become a lighter, more refined, more elevated version of yourself that doesn't feel bogged down by old junk you don't need anymore. With that being said, thank you for tuning in. I hope this episode helped you apologize to yourself and to others and forgive yourself and others at a level that you didn't know. And if you want one-on-one help with this specific exercise or other exercises and letting go, if there's something that's really bugging you, please reach out to me. That's why I'm here. You can reach out to me on my Instagram, on my socials. My @ is @SivaSoul. So if you do this exercise and you have great results, let me know how it went, because I was so excited to receive this and it clicked in my life. So hopefully it clicked in yours, and I will be doing this and forgiving and apologizing for a minute, because I just felt like it was that impactful for myself. So thank you for tuning in. Peace and love at you. I love you.